Harold Childress said here so many times, if you have doubts about something, if you're unsure, is this God's will, is this my will, I'm unsure what to do, something doesn't seem right. If you have all these doubts, chances are it's wrong. It's a sin. And the more you study his word, the more you understand the truth that's in this book right here, the more you'll be able to make those capable and competent decisions about what is right and what is wrong. So often we try to do everything on our own. We try, and a lot of times when we make mistakes, first thing we want to try to do is justify that mistake. And pride will kill you. Pride will send you straight to hell. John David was teaching a Sunday school several years ago and brought up a point about the book Dante's Inferno and the 7 deadly sins. And I think pride is considered the worst sin. The more pride you have, the more you don't need God. The more pride you have, the more you justify what you do. You think everything you do is right. You don't need a moral code of conduct. And once you stray down that path, it's going to take you straight to hell. A circumstance is another thing. I want to read to you here. This is from 2 Corinthians 2:12. Furthermore, when I came to Troas to preach, this is Paul speaking, Christ's gospel, and the door was opened to me by the Lord. You think about when Paul was going there to preach, but circumstances changed. You think about Jonah. Jonah was running from God. Circumstances changed. Jonah spent 3 days in the belly of a whale, but the Lord made sure that he went the way he was supposed to be. I think circumstances in our life, I don't know why I'm doing this, maybe it's because I'm touching it, but circumstances in our life change. Quite often people are put in a particular position, a particular area, things happen that make you do something different than you want, that make you go with God's will, that make you follow him. I think quite often circumstances dictate that. A lot of times with God's will, you're unsure what you've done, whether it's right or wrong. Sometimes it's days later before you realize whether it's God's will or not. Sometimes it's years later before you really realize what you did. Was it God's will? Was it your will? Did you say something, do something that day affect someone's life, and it didn't affect their life 2 years later? Quite often what you do right now is God's will. It doesn't appear to be, but it could affect you down the road. It could affect others down the road. God knew when each of us was born. He knew before we were born. He knew before each of you was born that you would be here today in the service. Perhaps something I said may help you years from now. Perhaps something you tell me later may help me years from now. Others and circumstances quite a bit to dictate God's will in your life. But I think prayer and his word are the two things that you have to concentrate on, that only you can do. God can put things in certain places and change people's lives, but only you can pray. Only you can study his word and gain knowledge. Also, our hearts have a lot to do with it. I want to read to you from John 16:13. However, when he, the Spirit of truth, has come, he will guide you in all truth. And he will not speak on his own authority, but whatever he hears, he will speak, and he will tell you of things to come. I think this also relates to studying his word. And as I mentioned a minute ago, the more you study his word, I think the more you realize what's right, what's wrong, a direction you should go in, a decision you make. Quite often you feel that in your heart. And I believe that's God tugging at you. I believe that's God helping you make that decision. The more you study that truth, the more it's going to impact on you. The more other people are going to see it. The more people are going to see that in you. Your heart is probably one of the most powerful things you have, and it's one of the most dangerous things you have, because it also controls your will and your feelings. And it's also always a tug of war between what you think is right, what your heart thinks is right. But the more you study, the more you get into the Lord, the more you know that book, the easier it's going to be for you to make those decisions. The other thing I want to talk about, and I apologize for keep going back to my notes. I was going to go over this again this morning, but I didn't have the time. Others also influence your life. Colossians 3:16. Let the word of Christ dwell in you, richly in all wisdom, teaching and admonishing one another. I want you to listen to that. Let the word of Christ dwell in you, richly in all wisdom, teaching and admonishing one another, and psalms and hymns, spiritual songs, singing with grace in the hearts to the Lord. Others, I think, have a big influence on your life, on following God's will. I know a lot of times we don't do this, but we need to ask and we need to discuss. If something's in your life affecting you, I think you need to bring it to people's attention more often. You need to talk to other Christians about it. You need to discuss it with others. I've been an elder in this church for 8 years, and there's not another elder in here I haven't gone to with a problem. To ask him to pray to me, to ask him to help me, to ask him to help me understand God's will. Others have a whole lot to do with it. Christ has put people in this church for a reason. He's put us all here this morning for a reason. But understanding God's will, we do need others to help us out. Because like I say, most Christians seem to go down that smooth, well, a few Christians seem to go down that lake very smoothly. But I think for the majority of us, we're always in a battle with Satan. And there are a lot of people, every time you see them, there's something in their life, there's turmoil in their life. And the easiest way to do it, you have a place here, you have Christians here, the elders, the deacons in this church. There's always someone in here to talk to. There's always someone in here that can help you, with a phone call or anything else. But I think so many times that we just let Satan overpower us. And we don't take a step back. We don't sit there, we don't pray about it, we don't discuss it. We seem to go head first into things. And a lot of that is, I think, is today's world. This is a fast-paced world today. We have cell phones, we have the internet technology. Everything is done on a moment's notice. And quite often when we're praying to God for something, we expect an answer right then. We have an issue, something in our life, we're not sure how we should deal with it. What is God's will in this issue? We sit there and pray. A few minutes later, we're walking around. I'm waiting. I want my answer. I need help. Where is it? I prayed. Where's my help? And it's not going to come like that. Our time schedule is not the same as God's. And I think a lot of times we take problems that we have in our lives and we look at small details of them. Because those small details are affecting us every day. But I think God is looking at the big picture. He's looking at the total picture. I don't think God is too worried about them small details. We seem like sometimes like we're overburdened, like we can't make it anymore. But God has told us He's never going to put anything on us we can't handle. And I'm not too sure that some people's shoulders aren't bigger than others. I'm not too sure that God doesn't put certain things on people or allow things to be put on them because He knows they have the shoulders that can bear those burdens. I lost my train of thought for a moment there. You'll have to forgive me on that. I think that we spend too much time worrying about these little bitty issues. And we don't have faith in God that His plan is for the day, for yesterday, today, and tomorrow. The only thing on our mind we can see is what's going on today. We don't think about yesterday. We don't think about tomorrow. We're thinking about that problem today. And we're thinking, Lord, I've asked for help. I have prayed. I have studied your word. I'm in the same situation. I cannot believe this is your will for me. I cannot believe this is your will for me to live a life like this. I cannot believe this issue, this problem hasn't been solved. Why is it not solved? Sometimes it's being solved and you don't realize it. Sometimes it takes a long time. God had His plan. Sometimes you're going through a particular trial or tragedy in your life or a burden for some reason because it's making you a different person, a better person for the future.